So it's on tape. We will be focusing on this implementation section. I'm going to be starting on page 59 of tab 1. I just do want you to be aware that in this handout or in this presentation that you have, it does go through all of the different standards. So you have all that. If you look in tab 1 of your handbook, in the notes for the presenter, you will see some bulleted areas. Those are bullets from the proficient level of that standard from the rubric, so that you'll know what it is you're looking at. Those are the proficient behaviors that we would see under the standard. Okay, so for this pilot, the pilot has been divided up into 4 different periods. Goal setting, observations, mid-year discussion, and then the final evaluation. We will not be talking about the final evaluation segment today. You will receive training on that in January. So we're going to go up to that point, but then we'll stop there. The first period is goal setting, and that takes place during the month of January. When you train the evaluators in the school divisions, we've divided up this first segment into 4 important parts. So the first thing that a principal is going to need to do with the system is to provide an orientation. So they need to provide an overview of the pilot, and they will actually have this PowerPoint right here to present to their teachers. So they need an overview so that everybody is familiar with what's going on in the system. During the overview, it's very important to stress to the faculty and staff of the school that this is a pilot, but they have a very important role in the fact that as a pilot, you have an ability to impact and influence how this thing plays out in the future. So it's important from the get-go that people are taking notes and seeing the things they like and don't like and what's working and what's not working, so that at the end when we ask for feedback, we'll have some valid notes that people have been keeping track of. You know how it is at the end if you try to think back about 4 months ago about what you liked or didn't like, you're not going to remember. So it's good to emphasize that it's important to be keeping track of this stuff so we can use their feedback. The second thing that school administrators need to do is probably have a couple of more familiarization sessions just to allow the teachers to get a little more familiar with how they're going to be rated. One of the activities they might want to do during that session is an activity Leslie's going to do here at the end of the day, called Look Fors and Red Flags, where you're really going to dig into the standards. I should say during the orientation, there's an activity we're going to actually do here next called Scavenger Hunt, where you actually go through the handbook. That's another activity that we would recommend that the principals do with their teachers just to get them more familiar with the system. The more familiar they are, I think the better buy-in that folks are going to have. Again, as Celeste indicated, this material is going to be available to you on Blackboard and to the schools on the Blackboard system. The next thing is for teachers to do a self-assessment. And I'm going to show you the self-assessment form here in just a moment. But the teachers need to look at all 11 standards and go through them and assess themselves as far as what are their strengths and what are their areas of growth. Not only will that help them get more familiar with what people are going to be looking for and expecting of them, but it also will help inform their professional development and those kinds of things. And then the final piece of that first period is actually entitled Goal Setting, and the idea there is to use the self-assessment that the teachers just did and have that inform their goal setting and professional development or professional growth plans. We know that teachers have already set goals for the year, but they can take the self-assessment and modify those goals or come up with different strategies, maybe a more effective way to deal with achieving their goals, and maybe they can find some professional development based on where their strengths and weaknesses are. This is what the self-assessment form looks like. We do have samples of the filled out forms. The self-assessment form is actually on page 81 of your first tab. And that will just give you an idea of what the full-blown form looks like and what it might look like with it when the teacher fills it out. Okay, this self-assessment form, you can see it has it's just the rubric, which we talked about, and then it has an area for them to fill in their strengths and areas of growth. So that's the form that they're going to use. This is a goal setting form. This is in HCIS right now, and we are going to talk about goal setting in more detail over the next couple of days. But essentially, using the self-assessment they did, they're going to modify the goal or revise their strategies. That has to be entered into the HCIS system. So we have a hard copy paper that they can jot on, but it actually has to be entered into HCIS. Celeste.
Yes, I was kind of interject every now and then just talking about HCIS. One of the beauties of having this in the system is that when the principal is setting goals with that teacher, and that teacher is completing his or her goal setting form, the beauty of it is that those goals that are logged there on that form automatically populate the professional growth plan, so that whatever those goals are related to student achievement or whatever it is they're trying to do relative to student gains, that'll automatically populate it into the growth plan, so they don't have to do double work, and then you have full alignment between what they want to do professionally and how that is going to impact students.
Okay, and so this is kind of a paper copy of what the professional growth, but again, it goes into the HCIS system. Okay, the next period is the observation period that goes from January 20th through March 4th. There are two different kinds of data sources that evaluators are going to use in order to rate the teachers. First one is observation, and the second one is documentation. Observation. For the pilot, there's going to be one formal announced observation. It needs to include the beginning, middle, and end of the lesson. The idea there is that you're not just dropping in halfway through and missing what the whole gist of the lesson was. It has to be at least 30 minutes for elementary and a full class period for middle and high school. They're going to write notes on the observation form, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and that eventually needs to be put into HCIS. Teachers will have an opportunity on that form for a self-assessment, so they can kind of say what they thought they did on that observation versus what the evaluator thought. You also need to, the evaluator has to provide feedback on the observation, on this formal observation, within 5 days. You have to have a pre and a post observation conference, and you do have